All right, and I'd like to officially welcome you all to your RingCentral User Basics training. I'm Tara Hanna. I'll be your training specialist for today's session. And if you're not already aware of what RingCentral is, we're going to be your new phone company. We do a lot more than just standard phones, though, so hopefully you'll see the benefit of some of those features as we go through our training today. Now, I know that some people were having issues with audio. Hopefully, that has been sorted out as best as possible. If you are hearing an echo, make sure you've joined from only one form of audio. If I am coming through quiet, you can use Microsoft Edge, meaning you open up the Microsoft Edge browser and paste the meeting link in there. Hopefully, that will help with your audio. In the meantime, I've adjusted my microphone audio all the way up, and it does seem like your colleagues are able to hear all right. All right, and thank you, Tom. I can see the nodding. I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and move on. Now, I am, as I mentioned, recording today's session. So if for whatever reason you are having issues with the audio or you're not able to stay for the full meeting or weren't able to attend, that meeting will be shared with your team so they can share that out with you guys to view back as needed. For communicating in today's session, please ask questions if you have them. The questions help us adjust this session to your needs and make sure you're comfortable with the basics of the RingCentral phone system. For those questions, you are welcome to mute and unmute yourself, though please keep yourself muted if you're not asking a question. If you prefer, you can also use the chat. I see many of you have already located that chat feature. If you haven't, go ahead and select the chat icon at the bottom of our video meeting so you can see any links that I might share in today's session. You're also able to use the chat to ask questions. I am going to be demonstrating on screen throughout the duration of our training, so it is important that you have made it so that you can actually see what I'll be sharing. Please make sure the video meeting is full screen, taking up your full monitor. And if you need to adjust the viewing even further, in the top right-hand corner, you will see some additional viewing options within the RingCentral video platform. Now, for today's session, we are focusing just on the basics, things like how to make and receive phone calls, how to check your voicemail, and so on. If you're someone who wants to learn a little bit more in depth or more advanced items on the RingCentral system, or you'd like just a refresher on what we'll be covering today, I will be sharing a few links in today's training. The first one I'll share now, and that is our university site, university.ringcentral.com. This webpage is where you can go to see free online training to cover the same material we're covering today. You can also register for and attend free webinars that go a little bit more in depth, and you'll see those advanced training topics here too. So this is a great resource, and I highly recommend you all bookmark it. Let's go ahead and take a look at our agenda for today's session. And for any point of contacts I have in the meeting, please let me know if we need to make any last minute changes to this agenda. But we're going to be covering how to activate your RingCentral extension, essentially how to get logged in and access our applications. We'll also cover messaging, which think instant messaging or chat via one of the RingCentral platforms. And then we're going to cover phone, specifically through a desk phone model, Yealink T48S. Now, your company is also using an additional application where you can make and receive phone calls from the computer. So we'll talk about that application and features through there like texting and faxing. We'll wrap up by covering some of your extension settings, things like how to customize your voicemail greeting or adjust your operating hours if that's needed. And while I do encourage you to ask questions when you have them, I will try to leave a minute or two at the end for any additional questions that might have come up. I'll also share some additional resources for future learning or going more in depth if you'd like to. That is our game plan for today's session. So we're going to go ahead and dive right on in. First, with activating your extension. So it is important to activate your extension so you can activate the RingCentral system. You'll want to keep your eye out for an email that looks similar to the one that I've got on screen here. And that comes from support@ringcentral.com. The main thing that I want you to pay attention to in this email is the blue setup account button. This button will house a link that's unique to you as an individual, and that link is only valid for 48 hours. So it is important that you really keep an eye out for this email and complete the setup account link or process as soon as possible. If you're not able to do that within the 48-hour time frame, the administrative team is able to resend that link as needed. Now, what's going to happen when you select setup accounts? You're going to get walked through our Express setup. Your company is using single sign-on, so you will not have to worry about creating a password for the RingCentral system. Yay, one last password that you're going to have to deal with. But you will be asked to create a PIN to retrieve your voicemail messages from your phone. We'll also ask you to create a security question and answer so that you can reset your information if that's ever needed. Once you've completed these items, the next step in this process is going to ask you to provide your emergency calling registered location. This address should be where you actually work. If you work from home, that should be your home address. If you work in an office, that should be your office address. RingCentral does not stalk you. We do not follow you around, nor do we know your location at any given point in time, which is great for privacy. But it does mean if you have to call 911, we don't know where you are to send emergency services to. The address we provide emergency services is the one that you give us here. Now, with this address, you can update it later if you've moved. And also keep in mind, if you work in a hybrid situation or you travel for work, you can also just verbally provide your location to emergency dispatchers. This is just a good backup if you are calling from your actual location. Once you've completed this, the next step is just accessing the application. Now, the application will look a little bit different than the one that I have on screen right here. I'll show you what yours will look like in just a moment. But I'd like to ask our point of contacts in the meeting, Mike and Edis, for the RingCentral phone app, is that going to be downloaded to your users' computers automatically, or will they need to complete that download themselves?
The application should be on everyone's desktop already. If it has not been, we have ways of getting it downloaded. Just submit a support ticket to us and we'll get things handled.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Mike. I appreciate it. So we'll take a look at what your icon will look like just in a moment. But first, I want to tackle a couple of quick setup items. I'm sure these are already being handled, but just in general, RingCentral does recommend multiple monitors if you are someone who will be doing video meetings on a regular basis. We also always recommend that you have a high quality headset or set of earbuds. Again, I'm sure that's already been taken care of for you guys, but I will go ahead and copy our recommended headsets into the chat in case that's something that you're interested in. And that is it for activating your account. I see that we've had a couple of questions come through about your extension. So thank you, Mike, for addressing those. Are there any other questions for activating your account? All right. I'll take that as a no. Here we go. What about remote adjuncts with a home PC? As far as accessing the system, Doug, or just in general? Can you give me a little bit more there about what we might need to be looking at?
I can answer that question.
Sure.
We have not rolled out any adjuncts at this time.
There we go. Thank you very much then. All right, so we're going to tackle the phone side first. So we'll talk about the desk phone, specifically the Yealink model T48S. You guys got a fancy phone. This particular phone has a color digital display at the top that is touchscreen. So you can simply tap on screen to navigate through the phone menus. In the top right corner of that digital display, you'll see there is an LED light. This will blink red if you've got a new voicemail or an incoming call. On the digital display itself, you'll see a list on the left and right side of just extensions. Now, initially, these will all be your extension, but you can program these buttons with other numbers, essentially using them as a speed dial. If you program them in the RingCentral system, you can use those buttons not just as a speed dial, but as an indicator for your colleagues as to whether or not they're available for your call. If you list your colleagues here, it will show red, like this one does here, if your colleague is on a call. So you know it's probably not a good time to call them. I will show you how to program these buttons in the RingCentral system when we get to your extension settings. We call this feature presence, so just keep that in mind for a bit later. Also on screen, you'll see some additional buttons here. These buttons are programmable, so they may vary depending on your company. They may not look exactly what you see, like what you see here, but this is where you can go to access your company directory. This is also where you can go to turn Do Not Disturb on for your phone. We'll talk about that a bit more later. Looking at some of the other buttons on your phone, of course, you have your standard numbers. You have navigation keys to go up, down, back, and OK. You have volume keys. On the right, you'll see a key for headset, to mute, message, which is where you access voicemail, hold, transfer, read dial, and speaker. Going a little bit more in depth on those keys. The message key I indicated is voicemail. You can set up your voicemail greeting from here. You're also able to check your voicemail greeting here. You'll just follow the prompts that you'll hear once you select that key. Keep in mind, however, when you select this key, it is going to ask for the PIN you set up when you created your account. So make sure that PIN is something you'll be able to remember. The redial button, when selected, will present a list of your recent calls. You can then tap or scroll to select a call to redial that individual. How do you actually make calls from the phone? This one's going to be pretty intuitive, and if you've used a physical phone before, I'm sure this will be pretty comfortable for you. You can pick up the handset or receiver and then dial the number. You can select the headset if you're using a headset and dial the number, or same thing with the speaker button. If someone has called you, you can answer on any of these three devices just by selecting the appropriate button. Brad, I see your question. Is there a way to reset your PIN if you forget it? There is. It's through the application. So the best recommendation if you're not going to use the application is try to make sure you're able to remember that PIN. But yes, you can reset that PIN. That is definitely possible. All right. Now, one thing you might have noticed on this slide is it says you do not need to dial 9 or 1 to make a call. When you are making an outbound call from the RingCentral system, just dial the area code and the full phone number. No need for a 9 or a 1 or another prefix to dial out. When you are on a call, the display will change, adding some additional options here for you. At the top of the screen, you'll see who you're on the call with. And then on that display, you'll see a button to transfer, to hold. And remember, for both of these, you also have a physical key for either of these. They work interchangeably. You can use one or the other, whatever you prefer. You'll also see the conference option. And you'll also see a more option. If you select more, you'll have options for things like parking a call, if you'll use that feature as a company. If you need to initiate a call transfer, a warm transfer will allow you to speak to the party you're transferring to. So you can let them know what's going on, who you'll be bringing on the line, and sharing any applicable information from there. To initiate a warm transfer, you select your transfer key, whichever button you'd like. Dial the extension of the party that you'd like to transfer to. When they answer, you get to have your conversation with them. And when they're ready to accept your transfer, you just hit that transfer key again to send that call off. A blind or cold transfer is where you're just sending the party off without setting expectations with whoever's receiving it. So they don't know that you're transferring the call, what you were talking about, or any of those fun details. If you need to do a blind transfer, it's pretty similar. You just select your transfer key, dial the extension of the party you're transferring to, and instead of waiting on them to answer the call, you just hit that transfer key again to send that call off. Oh, and thank you, Paul. I was just about to answer that question. Casey had a good question. Do you need a long distance pin when you dial? No, that's not required from the RingCentral system. Good question, though. All right, conference calling. If you're talking to someone on the phone and you realize you need to bring someone else on that call with you, you can do that via the conferencing feature here. While you're on a call, you just select that conference button on that digital display. You dial the extension of the party you want to bring on the phone with you, and you can have a conversation with them to set the expectation as to what's going on when they answer. When you're ready to merge the calls together, you simply select that conference key again, and it will bring all parties on the call together. That is it for conferencing. If you're using call parking, if you select that more option when you're on a call, I mentioned you'll see call parking. If you're not familiar with what call parking is, it's just an alternative to transferring. If you ever walked into a grocery store or a department store and you heard someone say over the loudspeaker, "There's a call parked for the deli on line 4," or something like that, that is a call park. What happened is someone answered the call and they were not the best person to help that caller. So they placed that call on hold on extension 4. That person is now freed up to make and take other calls. And whoever works in the deli can pick up any phone in the store and retrieve the call from line 4. That is what call parking is, and you will see that feature built into the RingCentral system if you choose to use it. When you select park, you'll want to listen for the prompt that will tell you the extension number the call is parked on. To retrieve a call from park, you just pick up your handset or headset or speaker and dial the extension the call is parked on, and you'll be able to retrieve that just that easily. Now, that is actually it for the Yealink phone. I know that we went through this information pretty quickly, and unless you've had some practice with this phone, you may want to still have some additional resources here. So I'm going to go ahead and bring on screen one of the RingCentral resources for this phone. This is from our support site, which is one of the resources I'll share in a little bit of time. But I have that linked. I highly recommend you bookmark that link. And here you'll see a bit of information. For example, what's included in the package when we send out these phones, how to connect the phone, and so on. But if you scroll down, you'll see how to complete certain actions like record calls or check your voicemail, or start that conference call, use hold, transfer, and so on. So this is a great resource when you're actually taking calls and need some help on how to do things like transfer. Bill, I see your questions. You have to dial a 9 before the number you're dialing. No nines, no ones, no prefixes required. Just dial the area code and the phone number, unless you're dialing internationally, in which case you'll just dial the standard international format. But again, no 9 or 1 is required to dial externally. Maggie, how do you retrieve your voicemail messages? You tried and it did not recognize your PIN. That means that you may not have had the correct PIN. So the PINs do have to be between 6 and 10 digits long. You can't have any consecutive or repeating numbers in there. So the requirements for the PIN are fairly strict to help keep your voicemail secure. If you need to reset your PIN, there's a couple of different ways to do that, but the easiest I'll show you when we go through your extension settings. So I'll show you that later. You will need to create a new PIN, Maggie, but that's done. Remember when I was showing how to set up your extension, activate your extension? I mentioned that you'll have to complete the setup account link. One of those items you'll do is set up your PIN. All right, good questions, everyone. Now that's the basics of using the Yealink desk phone. Now, you guys are also going to be using the RingCentral phone application. RingCentral does have a few different applications. The RingCentral phone app will look like what I have on screen here. The icon will be an orange box, and inside of that, you'll see a phone, handset, or receiver, whatever you want to call that. If you load up this application, the first thing it's going to have you do is log in, and you can log in with your single sign-on criteria. So I'll go ahead and end my slideshow so you can see my computer desktop. And this is the application you guys are using, RingCentral Phone. When you open that up, you have the option to sign in. Now, for me, I'm not using single sign-on for this, but you will see single sign-on is available. When you select single sign-on, it's going to ask for your email address, and then it'll go through your company's setup process for single sign-on. With this, you're able to use generally just the same email and password that you use to log into your computer. But if you click single sign-on, it will walk you through that step by step. In my case, however, I don't use that for my test accounts, so I've entered in my details at the top, and I'm going to select sign in. And that is the basics of accessing this application. Now, since I did just log in, you'll see there's an alert down at the bottom. This is a friendly reminder that my location may not be shared with an emergency services dispatcher. Essentially, if I'm not where I said I was, RingCentral does not know what address to share. So this is just a reminder I may need to verbally provide my address to 911 if I call them from here and I'm not at the location I have on file. I'll go ahead and just close this since that is just a friendly reminder. Now, within the application, you'll see you have options at the top and at the bottom. The first thing I'm going to point out is in the top left. You'll see I have a very small circular dot, and that dot is currently filled in green. That is my phone status. And if I click on this, a new menu will populate. This is my profile. I can upload an image if I'd like. But here we'll see our phone status, and RingCentral will automatically upload or update this status from available to busy if I'm on a call. You can also manually change that status to invisible, which will give a gray dot, and this is what your colleagues see if you're logged out. So this will leave your colleagues guessing as to whether or not you're working, but it doesn't stop you from being able to get a call. You can also go into Do Not Disturb. If Do Not Disturb is selected, when someone calls you, that call will just go straight to voicemail. You're not going to get a ring. You're not going to have the ability to answer that call. You are left undisturbed. Do Not Disturb is fully manual. It is really important that if you are using Do Not Disturb, that you remember to turn it off. Change your status when you're available again. Otherwise, calls will keep just routing to your voicemail. So I'm currently unavailable, and I'll close out of the profile. Now from here, I'm going to look at the icons at the top first. The one that is an envelope is where I can see messages. From here, I'm able to listen to my voicemails without a pin. I'm also able to view any faxes or texts that I've received. You'll see here this voice message is in blue. There's a dot to the left. That indicates this is a new message I have not yet listened to. If I click on it, I have the option to listen to that voicemail. I can return this call. I can delete this item. I can even save it to my computer if I'd like. With texts, I'll be able to see the full history of texts. And down at the bottom, just like on my cell phone, I can initiate a text by typing, adding any emojis if I'd like, and sending. With faxes, I can view a fax. Faxes are sent and received as PDFs. I'll show you how to send one in just a moment, but you'll see it's opening up a PDF file here for me. So that is the message section. And at the top, you can filter these, whether you want to look at everything together or focus just on your voicemails, just on your faxes, or just on your texts, depending on your preference. Next up, we have the star symbol. The star symbols are going to be your colleagues. This will allow you to see your colleagues' availability at a quick glance. So you can think of this as the presence icon for the app. And as you can see, all of my test accounts are currently available. And if I hover over these items, I have the ability to call or text them directly. To add additional people to your favorites, you'll see there's the Head and Shoulders icon in the top right, where you're able to add your contact from the list of your contacts. Next up, there is a calendar icon. This one you would use if you are using RingCentral Video, which, if I recall correctly, you guys are not, at least at this time. So this is one that you likely will not need to use. We'll go ahead and move on. Next up, the clock icon is your call log. This is where you can go to view all incoming and outgoing calls. You can also focus just on your missed calls. But for these items, if you select any of them, specifically the information icon on the right, you'll get your call details, who the call was from, where it went to, how long it was, and any other details you might have for that individual. And at the bottom of the app, you'll see you also have options to call or text that person or delete that item from your call log. There is also a section here for recordings. So if you did record all or a portion of a call, which I'll show you how to do shortly, you can retrieve those recordings here. Next up at the top, we have your Head and Shoulders icon. This is your contacts. Your colleagues will automatically be listed as your contacts. But if you do need to add additional contacts, you can do so by selecting the plus symbol in the top right, where you're able to add contact details for whomever you'd like to include. Next up, we have the HUD, head-up display. The HUD is something that you can undock from the application. And when you do that, it'll stay on screen. And this is going to list all of those presence keys you have on your physical phone. And again, you'll be able to see, are those individuals available? If any of these were on a call, I would be able to see that listed here. Lastly, we have the phone icon. This is your dial pads. This is where you go to make or receive a call from the application. Notice at the top it says to, so I can enter in the name or the number that I'd like to call. The caller ID. By default, this generally will list your company's main phone number, but you can choose instead to list your direct number. In my case, this is a test account, so I've got a lot of numbers here. You likely will not see as many options. And again, by default, for most companies, it will just list that primary number for you. In the to field, if I know the number I'd like to call, I can simply type that out. Again, no 9 or 1 is required to make that call. And then I can hit the green icon down at the bottom to start that call. Or if I'm calling an internal number, I can dial the extension and I'll see that list for my contact populate right underneath. I can select this to dial if I'd like. Or if you're like me and cannot remember a phone number to save your life anymore, you can just type the name of the person you'd like to call. So long as they're in your contacts, you'll see it listed. So here we have Santiago Lagos. This is one of my internal colleagues for my test account, so I have an extension and a primary number for them. The best practice when dialing internally is to use the extension. I'll go ahead and make this call by selecting the extension and selecting the dial icon down at the bottom of my app.
Connect you.
Now, in my case, this account is a fake account set up to answer calls for demonstrating in class. So we didn't really get to hear the ringing on this one, but normally you'd hear a ringing while you were waiting on someone to answer. And I now have my on-call features. I can mute and unmute myself if I need to sneeze or cough or whatever. I can access a keypad if that's necessary for the number I've called. If I select audio, I can change my audio sources and volume. If I need to place the caller on hold, I can select the hold option. When selected, it'll turn to on hold, so that's my indicator that this person is currently on hold. And I can record a call. If I select this,
call is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please disconnect at this time.
If you were able to hear that, there's a brief message that plays that all parties on the call can hear. That fulfills state's requirements for a recording notification. And as we can see, that recording option is still here, but I can just choose to stop that recording. When I stop it, I'll hear another message to indicate the recording is stopped.
This call has been recorded.
And remember, you can retrieve those recorded calls when we were looking at your call log. To initiate a conference call here, you just select Add. You enter in the name or the number of the person you'd like to conference call. In this case, we'll say Rose Quartz. And you dial them.
Please hold while I try to connect you.
And I now have Rose Quartz on my phone, but notice I have quite a bit fewer options here. And down at the bottom, I have a green icon to add them to conference. That's the plus symbol. Or if Rose is not available, I can end just her portion of the call. If I add her to the conference, of course, all three of us will be able to talk together at once, but I'll go ahead and end her portion of the call. So I still have Santiago, no Rose anymore, but Santiago is now on hold. I can see that because the on hold indicator is on. I'll just select this to have Santiago back. If I need to transfer someone from here, I just select the transfer icon. And I provide the information of where I want to transfer to. We'll use Rose Quartz again. And now at the bottom of the app, you'll see you have three transfer options. Warm transfer, which will allow me to talk to Rose first and set the expectation as to what's going on. Blind transfer just sends my caller off with their caller ID, and Rose will receive that as an incoming call, but have no idea that I was talking to Santiago first. Or you'll also have the option to transfer to your colleague's voicemail. So if I know that Rose is currently on another call, I can just transfer directly to voicemail so Rose is undisturbed. I'm going to demonstrate warm transfer so you can see what that one looks like.
Please hold while I try to connect you.
And you'll see we've called Rose. I have Rose on my line. I still have Santiago, but Santiago is on hold. If Rose is available to accept that transfer, I just select the complete transfer option here. All right, now that is it for transferring. We have the call park option here, just like what I showed you on the physical phone. If I select call park,
Your call is parked. Park extension is *803.
the call is parked
Your
on.
call is parked. Park extension is
The call is parked on another extension, in our case, *803. So I can now reach out to whoever needs to talk to Santiago and tell them they can retrieve him from that extension. To get Santiago back, I just dial that extension, *803. And I now have Santiago back. But notice I've lost the caller ID. So just be mindful if you are using the call park option. The last one we have is call flip. With call flip, your desk phone will automatically be listed here. If I select to flip to this desk phone, my caller will be placed on hold. My desk phone will then ring, and I'm given the option to retrieve the call from my desk phone. You can also program additional numbers here or list additional numbers here. So maybe if you're working from a hotel temporarily while on vacation, you can transfer calls to your hotel phone without going through any major headaches. So this is a pretty seamless process. Just note that your caller is placed on hold so you can set the appropriate expectation. That's it for what it looks like to make a call in the application. Receiving a call is actually pretty similar. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate that here for you. I've logged in as one of my test accounts. And we'll see that I've got a pop-up on screen. Now, normally you'd be hearing a ringtone here as well, but I have muted that so that I don't blow out anybody's eardrums. Notice my head-up display on the right will tell that the person I'm speaking with has actually got that call option now. So here you can see what it looks like when someone is on a call. And I have the option to forward this call to another phone number. I can reply with a text. I can ignore this call, send it to my voicemail, or answer. And once I answer, my on-call options are the exact same. So that is making and receiving calls within the application. Sherry, I see your question from a couple of minutes ago. What happens if someone is not available for a transfer? That is a great question. So if I have Santiago on my line and I'm trying to
Please hold while I
transfer
try to connect you.
Santiago to Rose, I would be able to tell here whether or not Rose was on another call. Since it says available, that tells me Rose is theoretically available for a call. When I
Please
call
hold while I
Rose,
try to connect you.
if she's available for the transfer, I select the complete transfer option. But if she's not, I can just hit this X to close out that transfer. Rose will go away. I'll still have Santiago, but he's on hold. I just need to remove the hold. Hopefully that answered your question, Sherry. All right, just a couple of other quick things that we want to cover here. So I'm going to hang up on Santiago. And we're going to tackle these items at the bottom of the app. This is where you're able to initiate a text or initiate a fax or even a conference bridge. If I select the message icon, that's where I can start a text. I'm able to list the name or the number that I'd like to text. I'll use my contact Callie Lily. And down at the bottom, just like what I showed you guys earlier, I can list out my text, add an emoji, and hit send. But that's how you initiate a text if you're not in your actual received texts. If I select the fax option, I'm able to enter in the name or the number that I'd like to send the fax to. We'll use Callie Lily again. And I'm also able to choose a cover page. RingCentral has several default cover pages, which you can choose to view a preview of if you'd like to see what it'll look like before it's filled out. You can also add a custom cover page if necessary by entering the name of your cover page and attaching your file. Once you've chosen the cover page, it'll have a checkbox here, or you can choose no cover page, whatever you'd like. From there, you can attach a file from your computer. You are limited in size, but this size is still equivalent to about 80 standard pages, so it's sufficient for most people. Once you have your attachment included, you'll see down at the bottom you have the option to send your fax later, where you can choose the date and time, or you can choose to send it now. These options are currently grayed out for me because I haven't attached a file, but once you have attached a file, those would be available for you. Now, conference bridging is also available. If you need to have a phone meeting, you can have a bridge with up to 1,000 participants. If you select the Start Conference option, you'll be presented with your conference information, your host code, a participant code. These will stay the same for you regardless of when you're looking at doing this. And you can choose whether or not you want to allow people to join before you. You can invite people to your phone meeting via text or email, and you can just start a conference whenever you'd like. Now, next question is going to be for either Mike or Edis. I had noted that you guys are using messaging, but I also had received a note to not cover the unified app where messaging is located. So I just want to confirm for messaging, were we referring to texting or were we talking about instant messaging in the other application?
Well, I was waiting for Mike to answer. I believe it's the SMS right now that we're talking about.
Okay, that's what I suspected, but I wanted to double check before I confused things and pulled up other applications, so thank you. All right, so that is it for phone. Does anybody have any questions on phone before we move on to your extension settings?
I'm sorry, what was the previous question? I know SMS is the answer. They do use the RingCentral phone app, and we are enabling the SMS feature.
Yeah, so Bill, I had noted in the questionnaire that was submitted for this agenda that you did want to cover messaging, which is the instant messaging feature in the unified app.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. All righty, so we're going to cover your extension settings, everyone. Your extension settings are where you're able to customize some features based on your personal preference or needs. There's a couple of different ways to access your extension settings. The easiest is just by going to a web browser and typing in service.ringcentral.com. I'm going to go ahead and link that in our chat right now. I recommend you bookmark this link. When you go to this link, you'll see you have the option to sign in, including your single sign-on option. So you would want to select single sign-on, provide your company email, and follow the prompts that'll be listed there. You can also access this same web page from the application, so I'll show you what that'll look like. When I have the application pulled up, if I go to the View Settings gear wheel down at the bottom, in here, you have additional options that you can manage. For example, I mentioned earlier, I had my ringer turned off. You can make those changes here. But specifically, if you go to the General section, down at the bottom, you'll see you have the ability to access your account online for your extension settings. I'm going to select that link. And when I do, my default web browser is opening up. In my case, that's Chrome. And it's going to service.ringcentral.com. It's just logging me in. So that's a benefit of using the application to access this web page. Now that I'm in here, there's a few different things I'd like to point out. The Overview tab at the top will give you a quick access to a lot of the different things you'll see in this web page, including, you'll see there's a section titled Messages. If you come to Messages, you can view your messages, voicemails, texts, faxes, they're all here. And you'll see we have an action column with more icons for each of these. You have the ability to download your messages here to your computer. You can also forward them to someone else. If you go to call log, you'll be able to see all those inbound and outbound calls like what we saw in the app, but you also see the recording option. So if you need to listen to one of your call recordings, you can do that here. If you go to contacts, you're able to manage your contacts, including for personal, you're able to import your contacts. And if we go to settings, this is where you're able to manage those settings I discussed. If you prefer, you can add in your user hours, which is helpful if you might be using a mobile application, for example. If someone calls you outside of the set user hours, by default, those calls just go to voicemail. To access your user hours, you select user details, and then you select settings and permissions. From there, you'll see your user hours on the right, and you have the option to edit those. When you select edit in the pop-up that presents, you can choose the days of the week you work. You can also choose the times for each day as needed. Or if you prefer to not have user hours selected, you can just go to 24/7 and you never have to worry about it. Next up, I'm going down to call handling and forwarding. And this is where you're able to determine what devices ring if someone calls you, how long they ring for, and in what order. This is also where you program phone numbers for call flip, where you can forward your call from your computer to another device. By default, you'll see the apps listed first, and it'll say 1 ring or 5 seconds. If you don't answer in this time frame, calls will forward to the next line, in this case, your desk phone. And there by default, it'll ring for 4 rings or 20 seconds. But you can adjust these. Maybe you prefer to take calls from that phone app, but you want it to ring a few more times so you have a chance to answer it. You can make that change here. Personally, I work from home, so I don't want to have my desk phone ring because it'll make my dog start barking. I can even turn off the ringer for that desk phone here. Now, if I do want to program additional numbers to have calls forward to, like a home office, I can do that in any of these empty phone number fields just by typing in the number that I'd like to forward to. Once I have that typed in, we'll see that is listed to ring. If I don't want it to ring, I don't have to have it, but this is up to you to give you some mobility in where you're answering your calls. Any numbers listed here will also be automatically available for call flip. There is a lot that you can customize in here and a lot of different options. So this is a section that I recommend playing around with and experimenting to find what's going to work best for you. Lastly, we're going to tackle messages. This is one of the areas where you're able to adjust your voicemail items. For here, you'll see voicemail is enabled by default with a default greeting, but if you select the edit option, you can change that default greeting to a custom greeting. You can record that greeting either by having RingCentral call you or by using your microphone. And of course, you can also import a greeting if you already have one stored on your computer. Now, one thing I want to point out here, you do not see the option for resetting your PIN here. Since you guys do use single sign-on, it is a little bit more complex for resetting your PIN. If you do need help resetting your PIN, my best recommendation would be to reach out to your support team because they're able to reset your password. Since you guys have single sign-on, that's a little bit more complex, but still perfectly doable. But that's why I recommend when you're setting up your extension, you choose a PIN you'll be able to remember, or just check your voicemails on the app. That's it for our extension settings. Does anybody have any questions there? That's great, Edith. Thank you. You guys are going to be sending out more information on pins after the session. Fantastic. Thank you. All right, everyone. Well, that covers the material I had to review for today's session. So I want to open up the floor if anyone has any additional questions, or for your team, Mike and Edith, if you'd have anything else you'd like to share, you're welcome to do so.
I don't have anything at this time. Like I said, I'll be sending out something soon. Just once I get in touch with IS and stuff, but be looking for an email from us.
Excellent. All right, well then let's go ahead and tackle those resources that I promised to leave you guys with. Your learning does not have to stop here when it comes to the RingCentral system. I have two resources that I'm going to share here with you. The first is the university site that I mentioned a little bit earlier. For this university site, this is where you're able to access free online training. You're also able to register for those webinars that I mentioned, and you can see additional guides and videos. You can also view basic topics as well as advanced topics, depending on what you're interested in. So just follow the path that you'd like to learn more about. The next resource that I'd like to share with you is our support webpage. This is support.ringcentral.com, and I'll share this link in just a moment. But on this website, you'll see we have a search function. So if there's something specific you'd like to learn more about, you can just type that in here, and your results may include an overview, a step-by-step how-to guide, frequently asked questions, just depending on what you've searched. Also, at the top here, you'll see there's a whole section titled Training. When I select Training, you'll see we have a consolidated list of the training that we provide for you guys for free. So we have our Get Started section where we've taken this training and we've divided it in short 2 to 5 minute videos on specific topics. For example, we can get as narrowed down as maybe you need help with how to transfer. You can come here for that. You have a link to the university site that I shared and a direct link to those webinars that I mentioned as well. So this is a fantastic resource as you're learning the site or if you need additional help down the line. I'm going to go ahead and get those links into our chat right now. The last link that I'm going to share for you guys is actually for me. At RingCentral, one of the things we value most is your feedback. That's actually how my performance is rated. So if you do have a free moment, I'd really appreciate if you are able to complete that survey. Comments specifically are highly valued, whether positive, constructive, or otherwise. I have that linked in the chat as well. It only takes about 30 seconds to a minute. And that, everyone, is all I've got for you. I hope this was a good introduction into RingCentral and those basic items that you're going to need to get started. If you do have any additional questions, I'll be happy to stay on the line for a few minutes to answer those. But that's actually everything I have for you. So at this point, at least for me, you're welcome to drop off. But for the admins on the call, I will be uploading the recording of today's session to the Google Project Drive that we established for you. I'll have that uploaded before close of business today. And that's everything I've got for you guys. So I want to thank you all so much for your time and your attention. I hope everyone has a great rest of your Tuesday. If you have questions, I'll hang on for another moment or two for you. But otherwise, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Tara, very much. I enjoyed your puns and all your users.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. I always hope it's a nice, subtle joke for those who are able to
There
see it.
were a bunch. That was great.
Good.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. And thank you all. I appreciate that. Thank you, Claire. I appreciate that. That was an old nickname for me. I'm glad it comes to use in my current job.